We are blessed this morning, I believe, to have Chris Farrell as our speaker. Chris has a heck of a background. You're going to learn a lot about Judicial Watch. Anybody that did not get the brochure, raise your hand, and Angel, who's also with Judicial Watch, will make sure that you get one. Chris joined Judicial Watch in '99 as the Director of Investigation and Research. He's been a member of the board since 2003. He's a native of Long Island, distinguished military graduate from Fordham, a BA in history, except a regular Army commission, served as military intelligence officer specializing in counterintelligence and human intelligence. Chris is a graduate of the Military Intelligence Officers Basic and Advanced Courses, a U.S. Army Advanced Counterintelligence Training Course, Combined Armed Services Staff School, a U.S. Army Command, General Staff College, Defense Intelligence Agency's Military Operations Training Course, and the Haus-Riesen Institut für Politik und Wirtschaft in Hamburg. He is a specialist in national security matters, specializing in unconventional warfare and terrorism, following command and staff assignments that included 3 tours of duty in the Federal Republic of Germany. Pardon me. 1 tour at Supreme Headquarters of Allied Power Europe. Chris returned to civilian life as a contractor to defense and intelligence services to nonprofit organizations, active in the establishment of a small private co-ed Christian high school where he both taught and served as a director. He's appeared on numerous television programs, radio shows, has authored dozens of articles, contributed a chapter on terrorism to Dr. Erwin Wedlener's book, Americans at Risk. Chris maintains a busy lecture schedule on both government corruption issues and intelligence matters. I think I've told you enough. Is this guy qualified or not to tell you about what we're going to talk about this morning? Chris Farrell. Let me give you the mic. There we go. Make sure here we got to. Yep.
I knew this.
Yep.
That's great. Put that in your pocket.
Yeah. Great.
So, thank you for the very kind, if overly long, introduction. It's a little embarrassing when they read all the stuff. It was designed really for a website, not for somebody to casually get up and chat about. So first of all, it's a pleasure to be here, to have the opportunity to talk to all of you about Judicial Watch, what we do and how we do it. What I'd like to do is give you a little background as to the organization itself, what we do and how we operate. And then I want to focus on something that I think will be of great interest to all of you, and that is in particular something out of the headlines, which is very topical and I think very newsworthy and very important as a public policy issue. And that has to do with Hillary Clinton and her emails at the State Department. Frankly, Judicial Watch is outside of government organizations, government entities like the Department of Justice. We're the only game in town with respect to pursuing the facts and the truth concerning these emails. And I'll give you examples of exactly how that's true. And then I don't want to spend too long up here talking because I'd much rather answer your questions. I believe a give and take back and forth would benefit all of us, right? To get your ideas, your opinions, and then also hopefully answer some questions that may be out there sort of lingering. So I hope that many of you are familiar with Judicial Watch, but maybe some of you are not. So let me give you a quick overview. We're a government watchdog group. That's how we're organized. We're also organized under the IRS code as a charity. We're a 501c3. We're a nonprofit organization organized as an educational foundation. So our goal is to educate the public about the operations of government. And we do that very aggressively through the use of the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA. That's the acronym. And I use that FOIA as a gerund. Right? Remember that from your probably elementary school education, right? So it's a noun with an ing on the end, right? It's the act, it's the verb, a noun acting as a verb. So we're FOIAing a lot of different stuff out there, and we do it all the time. The organization's been around for about 22 years. I've been with it for 17 of those years. I come to Judicial Watch as a former intelligence officer. In particular, I was commissioned as a military intelligence officer, but then specialized in counterintelligence work, and then later on I was cross-trained at what's referred to as the farm as a clandestine human intelligence case officer. So as an Army officer, I went to the CIA and was trained to identify and hopefully recruit folks to conduct espionage on behalf of the United States. Most of my time was spent doing counter-espionage work, so my job was to find, identify, and interdict or stop people from spying on the United States. I'm very proud to say that I personally put 6 bad guys away, 6 foreign intelligence agents who were spying against the United States, 2 Russians, 2 Poles, and 2 East Germans. So I was very fortunate in that regard. And so when I talk about Hillary Clinton and her email, and in particular violations of the Espionage Act, which I'm going to get into detail on, I'm not guessing at this. This is not an academic exercise or people on set at Fox News or somewhere else having grand thoughts or behind a keyboard typing about it. I've done it for a living, so I'm not guessing at it. And I can tell you in particular details of how what Mrs. Clinton has done is worse than Snowden. So I'll get to that in a second. So I told you Judicial Watch is a government watchdog group. We make very aggressive use of the open records laws. One of the ways that we're a little different from other public policy groups in Washington, D.C. is that we just don't talk about stuff or come up with policy ideas and hold conferences. We litigate. We go into court and we sue the government, and we do it often. We're equal opportunity offenders. We've upset Republicans and Democrats alike. For us, it's principles over politics. So people will say, oh, you're just picking on the Democrats, and you're picking on Hillary, you're picking on Obama. Well, that's true, but those are the folks who've been in power for the last 7 years. We also picked on President Bush, frankly. We sued the Bush administration more than 200 times, and mostly over open records issues, instances where we asked for records, they didn't produce them, and the only way to compel them to produce the records that, frankly, you're owed, because FOIA is a disclosure statute. It's an affirmative thing. When you ask the question, the government must respond. When they don't respond, the only remedy to force the government to compel them to produce records is to sue them. So that's how we operate. That's what we do. So let's talk about Hillary Clinton and her emails. In 1999, a woman walked off the elevator at Judicial Watch, approached our receptionist and said, hi, I'm the chief of White House Information Technology. I know that you guys have been going after records and you've been stonewalled, and I want to tell you what's really going on. A very brave woman. She gave us a roadmap to records that we had been in court suing over for literally years. And she described exactly how they were being withheld and hidden, and kind of 3-card Monte game of, try and hide, try to find where the hidden records are. And she was very explicit about all the different details of how the White House was organizing their records to prevent them from being disclosed in a lawsuit, not targeting the White House, but actually the Commerce Department, but to which they were party. In addition to telling us all about these records and where they were hidden and what the procedures were in the White House, she said, as the chief of information technology, I do all the networks in the White House, all the computers. They're all my responsibility. And something that you may find both curious and disturbing is that every day Sidney Blumenthal shows up to work in the White House, goes into his office, closes the door, and downloads porn for hours on end. And she says, the reason I'm telling you that, besides sort of the salacious nature of what he's doing, is that he keeps knocking down the White House internet connection. Because he realized the time frame. This is the mid to late 80s. So this is like 97, 98, 99. She's telling us this in 99. He says when he goes in and does that and downloads porn all day long, he's bringing in bugs and viruses, and realized at the time, the internet being what it was in 1998, 97, the bandwidth issues, this is not it isn't what it is now. Let's just put it that way. This is 20 years ago. So she says it's very frustrating. I have to send down technicians to clean up his computer, reset the servers, and get the internet back up because the White House is relying on this. The reason I tell you that is because, in large part, one of the ways in which Hillary Clinton's email scandal was exposed was because a Romanian hacker by the name of Gussifer. That's his handle that he uses, his nickname. Gussifer, a Romanian hacker, did a screen capture of Sidney Blumenthal's inbox and published it in the Daily Mail, or gave it to the Daily Mail and they published it. And that screen capture of Sidney Blumenthal's inbox showed HDR22 at clintonemail.com. Whoa, what is that? And that's how people found out, among a couple of other ways, that Hillary Clinton was running her own email, was not using the State Department emails. If a Romanian hacker going through Sidney Blumenthal's email can get to Hillary Clinton's email in her server, which is the operative word here, server, what do you think the Russian and Chinese intelligence services can do? Right? That's something to really, that is the grave risk that we face. So in this litigation where this woman came in and told us everything that was going on, it's very interesting that we pursued this matter for years. The White House was defended by then Deputy White House Counsel Cheryl Mills. Well, who's Cheryl Mills? Well, that's Mrs. Clinton's, or was until recently, until she left office. That was Mrs. Clinton's chief of staff in the State Department. So she was in the White House as Deputy General Counsel, defending the White House over an email scandal 16 years ago. And where is she today and what's she doing? It's the same thing. In that litigation, when she was defending the White House, the judge in the case, U.S. District Court Judge Royce Lamberth, when he issued a final ruling, a final order closing out the case, he described Cheryl Mills' professional conduct using two words, long narrative, but two words in particular, and these are quotes. He called her professional conduct loathsome and inadequate as the Deputy White House Counsel because of her efforts to forestall, to break, to disrupt, to hide and delay the release of these records. And so, it's now however many years later, 16 years later, and we have emails from Sidney Blumenthal to Hillary Clinton. We've got Cheryl Mills acting as sort of the consigliere, right, the attorney as the go-between, 16 years ago and then today, with the same emails with respect to the State Department and Hillary Clinton. And when you look at these two, and I only raise this because we're looking at the same, essentially, cast of characters, the same behavior, the same conduct, the same mentality. And for the most part, the public has no idea that there's this pattern and course of behavior over this long period. What's the one thing tying all those things together? Judicial Watch. Right? We were in litigation 16 years ago trying to force the production of these records, or we're in litigation today doing the same thing, trying to get some kind of accountability for records that Mrs. Clinton is trying to withhold from the public. Let me address a couple things that you often hear from talking heads and various analysts who say, oh, this is no big deal. Colin Powell did the same thing. He sent emails. Let's be very clear. An email, or even a dozen emails, or 50 emails from my Gmail account or from a Hotmail account or whatever, is not the same thing as setting up your own private server in your home and running all of your business across the server, which is what Mrs. Clinton did. Mrs. Clinton did not use her state.gov. She didn't have a state.gov email address. Look, another thing important to understand, I know there's an admiral here, so he'll understand this instantly. There's an unclassified system. There's what's called SIPRNet, which is the secret or secure internet protocol network, which is the classified version. And then there's what's referred to colloquially as the high end, meaning information or a channel of communications that handles top secret and top secret code word material. So the unclassified stuff is, hey, we're going to have a meeting next week for our equal opportunity briefing. Right? Completely unclassified, no one cares. It's just routine day, mundane stuff. Meetings, notices, that kind of stuff. The secret channel is exactly what it sounds like. It's stuff where you discuss classified information. And then there's a third channel, which is for the really secret stuff, the stuff that involves intelligence methods and sources, very often technical means of collection, I'll let you fill in the blanks on that. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to confirm it, but technical means of collection or very sensitive source reporting where human beings are involved, right? And that level of material is protected all by itself. The three different systems never physically cross, never. You can't do a cut and paste off one screen and put it on another. You can't do it. It's physically impossible. There's literally what they refer to as an air gap, right? There's no way to go from one to the other. Except if you're Mrs. Clinton. Because what you do is you have your own private server, and you have people like Huma Abedin. I don't know this for certain, but we're going to find out because we've been granted discovery in our case, where she would excerpt material off of one screen and type it on another. I don't know this for a fact, but it's my supposition. So she's reading off of a top secret cable some kind of reporting about what's going on in, let's say, Libya. And it's a 5-page IIR, Intelligence Information Report, describing certain activities. And she says, well, it's a 5-page report, but what are the three nuggets? What are the three pertinent points you got to know? And instead, she gets on her iPad, excerpts it, hits send, and it goes over Clinton email to Mrs. Clinton. Is it marked classified, which is a phony throwaway line that she uses over and over again? No, it's not marked classified, because all the pertinent information was excerpted by somebody from a high-end classified system and sent over a server. No other cabinet official in the history of our country has ever set up their own server to conduct all of their official business. None. Not ever.
Why did you do it?
To control information, because she has memory as well as I do, because she knows about Judicial Watch suing her 16 years ago to get information out of the White House. And they know that, folks have also kind of caught on to what we do, and frankly, imitation is the highest form of flattery. So there's all sorts of folks who have jumped on the bandwagon of what we've perfected over the last 22 years. And people are using FOIA in a very aggressive ways, trying to get records and documents. And she is terrified of that. And so the only way you obviate that completely is you set up your own server and you control the information. And so even, you'll hear over and over again, well, I provided 55,000 pages of emails to be reviewed, and let's discuss that. I mean, there's another glossed over fact. She provided 55,000 pieces of paper to be reviewed. Why does that matter? Because if you're really going to turn it over, you turn over electronic or digital copies of the documents. Why? Because you'd have metadata on that. What that means is you'd be able to see forwards, BCCs. You'd be able to see the whole history of a document. Who authored it, when, where did it go, it gives you the whole picture of the record. Who excerpted stuff out of it. You're able to see so much more. 55,000 of paper. I mean, it is literally the dumbest form, and figuratively speaking, in the sense of it's not smart data. It is the dumbest form of information you could turn over. And essentially, she only turned over half of what she had. It's not even clear that she fully complied with what was ordered by the judge. So there's a few things going on with respect to the investigation itself. I want to discuss the two tracks. There's a criminal track, which has two parts to it, and there's a civil track. I'll do the criminal first, because obviously that's the one that has the greatest jeopardy and the greatest consequences. But the civil track shouldn't be ignored either, because for the reasons I'll get to.
Are you saying that this woman, Mrs. Clinton, has that much disrespect for our country and for the traditions and for the protocol? Is it just disrespect, or is she trying to commit criminal acts?
I think it's a sense of entitlement. Someone who's an ideologue, who's been in government now in one form or another for the past 35 years. There's a lot of questions with respect to the foundation, and using that as sort of an other means of, influencing exerting their will, influencing things.
When you don't respect protocol, that's like a slap in the face to our form of government.
It is.
And it's the protocol she's not respecting.
It's the law. It's even higher than protocol. Protocol is sort of like customs and mores, right? It's the law. It's the black letter law that she's involved in. There's two particular portions of the law that this is a good point to discuss that. What is the law? What's governing here? What controls what occurs or how you handle this information? There's two aspects of the law I want to discuss. For those folks who want to look it up, it's 18 U.S. Code, Section 793. That's the felony. That is mishandling of national defense information. That's each and every instance, 10 years and $10,000 minimum. That's the heavy-duty one. That's the one that if they're going to lower the boom on you, they charge you 793. 1924 is the lesser. That's sort of the misdemeanor. That's what General Petraeus was charged with and pled out to. 2 years probation, $100,000 fine, and an otherwise distinguished career sullied, right? If you want to do comparative scale kind of thing, what General Petraeus did was objectively wrong, and he pled out, and he disgraced himself, unfortunately. Mrs. Clinton and what she has done, in my opinion, and of course there's no ruling, but I am allowed to have my opinion, and it's an informed opinion, she is exponentially beyond anything General Petraeus did. General Petraeus, had an error in judgment, and the relationship with the biographer / girlfriend, you can't explain that or justify it. It's bad, okay, fact. But even the information that he shared with her and that he maintained in his home unlawfully, she was a serving reserve lieutenant colonel intelligence officer. So even if he made disclosures to her that were not legitimate and lawful, it wasn't like he was giving it to the Chinese or the Russians. He made an unlawful disclosure to somebody who at least had a clearance, who at least was a reserve Army officer. It doesn't make it better, but if you're trying to evaluate and do kind of the whole picture, he blew himself up, and there's no excuse for it. But the flip side of that is what Mrs. Clinton has done, which in my opinion, is so far beyond anything General Petraeus did. Frankly, I argue if the compromise has occurred, it's a big if, it has to be proven, but if the compromise has occurred that I think has occurred, it goes beyond even what Snowden gave away. Snowden snapshotted a number of different programs and questions or operations, but to have 4 years of everything that went in and out of the Secretary of State's office is so damaging, both to national collection means, technically, human intelligence, to our foreign policy. It's breathtaking. General Hayden and General Mike Flynn, who was former director of DIA, have both opined, and again, these are very informed opinions. A foreign intelligence service would love to have even just her unclassified email, just her calendar. What are you doing today? What meetings are you going? What do you really think about Chelsea's dress? Because they want to get inside their head. They want to know their thinking. They want to know what they're spending time on, where they're going, what they're doing. So even unclassified email is of enormous interest to a foreign intelligence service, enormous, let alone having everything that the Secretary of State saw, did, communicated, et cetera. And so I've given you the two sections of law. I've talked about the email controversy itself. So the criminal side is the FBI is looking at two parts, the two portions of law that I just discussed. They're also looking at a public corruption issue. I know that there's 150 agents sitting in Chantilly, Virginia, in an office park, working this case. It's not being done out of headquarters FBI. They actually moved them out of the city to an office park to do this separately. So one part's looking at the national security crime, and that's what this is. It's a national security crime. Looking at that. The other part's looking at a public corruption issue, and they're trying to tie together the actions of Mrs. Clinton as Secretary of State, the Clinton Foundation, money, movement of money, whether it's what they don't call it donations or pledges, they call it commitments, right? That's the language they use when they refer to money being given to the Clinton Foundation. Commitments by foreign corporations, businesses, leaders, groups, whatever, and then some overt act, some decision, some policy, some letter, some phone call And so if you can tie together, her official duties, the actions of the Clinton Foundation and or her husband, money and some act, and then kind of weave the email between that, there's a public corruption case which would make, devastating, right? It would make other scandals look like kindergarten stuff. And so those are the two tracks that are going on with respect to the criminal investigation from the FBI. Civilly, we have pursued these records now for quite some time. In fact, one of the cases, this is going to sound excessive, but it's true. We have 20 lawsuits with respect to Mrs. Clinton's emails. 20. And mostly it's because of gamesmanship, frankly, on the part of the State Department. And so we had to pursue each and every one of these angles. The most important case, frankly, is right now before Judge Emmett Sullivan, who ironically was appointed to the bench by Mrs. Clinton's husband. So this is hardly a right-wing conspiracy on the part of Judicial Watch, right? Her husband's own appointee is the one pressing on this case. And 2 weeks ago, he granted us discovery, which is monumental, because Freedom of Information Act cases almost never get to the point of discovery. But the judge is very frustrated, and he sees that the government's engaged in rope-a-dope. They're playing little Mickey Mouse games in an effort to really provide political cover for Mrs. Clinton. And so the judge said, look, let's ask a very simple, basic question. There's a Justice Department attorney representing the State Department sitting in the courtroom. And the judge says, look, here's a basic interrogative. You need to be able to answer it for me. Who approved the use of the server? This should not be hard to figure out, right? Who approved the use of the server? Who said she could do what she did? Thundering silence. I'm not in a position to be able to answer that, Your Honor. So he lost his temper. He said, enough. He goes, I keep getting declarations. Every 2 weeks I get a new declaration from a Justice Department or State Department attorney saying, oh, we found new records. Oh, we found another set of records. Oh, we didn't realize. And he's exhausted his patience on this. And so he granted us discovery. What does that mean in regular plain English? We will take sworn depositions from Hillary Clinton's circle of people. We will take sworn depositions from State Department officials. We may, this is a reach, but not too far of a reach, we may even take Mrs. Clinton's deposition because the judge has authorized us to do that. Our discovery plan will be submitted next Tuesday, so in whatever it is, 5 days, 4 days. The government has an opportunity to come back and say, oh, no, we don't think you should do that. We should talk to this guy, now that guy. So there's a little bit of horse trading back and forth. But within 6 to 8 weeks, we will begin taking sworn depositions of people like Huma Abedin, Cheryl Mills, Undersecretary of State Patrick Kennedy, who had authority over all of this stuff. He's the kind of go-to guy. He's the guy with the magic wand who could authorize all these acts.
Is there any reason you wouldn't go to Mrs. Clinton?
I'm sorry?
Secretary with Mrs. Clinton, is there any reason you wouldn't go to discovery with her?
No, none at all. I mean, I think what the judge will say is, well, let's do this incrementally. Let's work our way there. But ultimately, and it's her server. She made the decision. She wanted it done. So, I mean, if you track it back, what's the proximate cause of this thing being done? She said, gee, I'd like to be able to, and all of her munchkins went to work to get it done, right? So that's why I say it's not outside the possibility. But I think that, sort of the prudent, least invasive way to get there is he'll want to start with people like Brian Pagliano, the guy who actually set the server up, who's been granted immunity. Why wouldn't he talk to us? So
clearly she knew she was doing something that wasn't
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
and she didn't think she'd ever get caught?
No, because I mean, look, this is, again, it's a sense of entitlement. This is the way that they've lived. She hasn't driven a car since the mid-1990s, right? They're in their own little bubble world. This is very grave stuff.
So what was the ultimate purpose of creating this little network?
To control information. She's going to release what she wants to release. And she'll decide whether you need to know it or not. And you can imagine, if it's very self-serving and she looks like she's a genius and a Nobel Peace Prize winner, then they'll release the information. if she, as we've already discovered through our litigation, if she slept through intelligence briefings, her staff was trying to get a hold of her the day after Benghazi, and she slept until 10:45 in the morning, and her staff couldn't get a hold of her, then you know that, in fact, she slept in and didn't bother answering the phone or talking to her staff. And that the briefer who was sent over from the CIA, sat in the foyer of her home with the briefing book to tell her what was happening in Benghazi that day. She missed calls. She didn't respond. This is the morning after Benghazi. She was not plugged in. She was not involved. So, I mean, that's, has there been a lot of coverage of that? Some. Enough, in my opinion? No. Yes, sir.
Does John Kerry, as the current Secretary of State, have any role in either assisting your investigations or impeding them?
Mostly impeding, because the staff, acts at his direction now, and so this is more foot dragging in an effort to delay and stall. I have a very friendly, sort of cheerful argument with my colleague Tom Fitton. So the Judicial Watch organizationally, there's three of us that run the organization. Tom Fitton is our president and our spokesperson. Myself, I do all the investigative and research work, the division there. Then our chief attorney is Paul Orphanides. And so Tom and I go back and forth jokingly, and our offices are nearly adjoining. You can kind of talk one to the other. He's convinced that the FBI will move for an indictment, and it sets up an interesting question, because the question is whether Mr. Comey has the stomach to do that, to go to Attorney General Lynch. And then Attorney General Lynch is really, talking about a political operative in the vein of Eric Holder, whether she would suppress that, stop that, deny it, or just kind of, stick it in her pocket and say, thanks for your helpful input. Or whether she would act, and I don't think she would. So then is there another sort of Nixonian Saturday Night Massacre? Does Mr. Comey resign? Do other assistant U.S. attorneys resign? So my colleague Tom says he can't see how they wouldn't move to go to a grand jury for an indictment. Unfortunately, I'm a pessimist. I'm a sort of a cheerful cynic. I don't think they will, and I don't think I'm in an incredible minority, and I'll disclose this up front. I'm like the 0.5% in the whole population who does not hold Mr. Comey in very high regard. Everybody else in the world thinks he's a genius and he's wonderful and he's ethical. I don't, and I have reason for not holding him in high regard, with respect to two instances in a public corruption case in El Paso, Texas, that I know that he has knowledge of because of a case that I brought to Senator Grassley in the Judiciary Committee and the Inspector General of the Justice Department, that they spent a year investigating, that I know that he knows about, and he's taken no action on. So given the opportunity, he's already taken a pass, and I know that he has. So I don't hold him in very high regard. Other people think he's a genius. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I don't think he has the guts or the spine to do it. And certainly I don't think Loretta Lynch is very interested in undermining her political ally. So I don't know what happens. It's an interesting question. It's a very grave question for the country.
What's your relationship with the FBI now? Are they helping you at all?
No, there's no contact, no communication, nothing. It's zero.
Chris, can you touch on Benghazi and the other? I don't know if I'm going to take you away from that, but Benghazi, one thing, and then next our border security. That touches a little bit on the Comey issue there.
Yeah. So I mean, here's the headline the Obama administration did not want the American public to see 6 weeks before the election in 2012. Obama administration arms Al Qaeda. And that's what the headline would have been. And why do I say that? Okay, so we all know about the tragedy in Benghazi. What was Ambassador Stevens doing there in the first place? Well, the last guy he met with was the Turkish General Counsel. Why was he meeting with him? Why was there a base? People sort of discuss a CIA base like they discuss a 7-Eleven at the corner. Putting a base in a place is a big deal. It is not something that's done in sort of a cavalier or, gee, what are we doing this weekend? Let's set a base up kind of thing. It has an enormous footprint. It has a huge signature. There's a bunch of guys who look like me driving around in up-armored SUVs. So it sticks out, right? It's not a simple or easy thing to do. And so all the locals in Libya knew what it was, knew what it was doing. And so here's sort of a shorthand interpretation of, there was a decision made to arm Syrian rebels, many of whom we really don't even know who they are, but to arm Syrian rebels, and to do it taking weapons from Libya and essentially repackaging them, putting them on Libyan freighter, sending them to Turkey's southernmost seaport, then transshipping them to Syrians. There's nothing illegal, immoral, or fattening about that. Nothing. Zero. You can have a presidential finding that says we want to do this. It's a clandestine operation, or at least a covert operation. Clandestine meaning no one ever knows you were there. Covert meaning you can't catch me. I mean, that's really kind of the difference between the two. So, I mean, clandestine would be, I go into your office, I get into your safe, I take all your documents, I copy them, I put them all back, I close the safe, I get out. You never knew I was there. That's clandestine. Covert means you didn't catch me doing it, in the sense that there's some element of deniability. That's what it really means. So there's this decision to arm Syrian rebels, and so it's public knowledge. The State Department had some $40 million program where they sent guys out with pickup trucks to drive around to various Libyan chieftains with shrink-wrap bundles of $100 bills and just buy back weapons from them. Part of it was just straight weapons. Part of it was a little heavier stuff, things like mortars. And then the real concern was man-pads, right, which were shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. That's what had people's attention. And so there was an effort to go out and gobble all these weapons back up. And they reportedly had success in doing that. And the base was repackaging them, among other things, and sending them off to the Syrian rebels. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not illegal, it's not bad, it's not a lot of things. But the problem is, if it was disclosed or if in some way it became public before the election, you get the headline I started off with. Obama administration arms al-Qaeda, because no one really knew who the hell we were giving the weapons to, right? Which is part of the problem. And so the reason why there's a Benghazi committee even formed is because we haven't covered the email where a gentleman by the name of Rhodes in the National Security Council had an email where he's trying to synchronize everyone's response. This is the phony video story, right? And he says, blame the video, not a broader failure of our policy. And he put that in writing. And he shot it around the state, DOD, everyone get on the same map. That email was really the impetus. It forced Boehner to appoint Trey Gowdy to be head of the Benghazi committee. Because frankly, Mr. Boehner and the other members of what's called the Super 8 or Gang of 8, the guys who get briefed in all these intelligence operations, they reveled in 5 different committees looking at Benghazi. They loved it. There was no synchronized coordinated activity, right? You had 5 different committees all fighting each other for witnesses and who was doing what when. And they're very happy having 5 different committees do it, because you'll never get a conclusion. But their hand was forced with this email, because there was too much public pressure. Trey Gowdy has his committee formed because of this email that we got. And even then, they held this hearing with Mrs. Clinton, who shows up, and they turned it into a cartoon event, right? 11 hours of circular questioning. In the old days, they would have a prosecuting attorney, essentially, investigative counsel, who would run all the questioning. And then the members would sit there and kind of chime in with additional questions. In this case, there was a scattershot, one friendly questioner, one hostile questioner, one friendly, for 11 hours. And Mrs. Clinton comes out looking as though she's ready to be canonized. So it was a mess, very poorly run. So that's Benghazi, real fast. What else did you want me to talk about?
Well, how did Benghazi come out? Why do we know about Benghazi?
Oh, I told you, because of the fact that we got these records through FOIA, again, through our litigation. Angel has, he can give you information later on a documentary movie we did called The Sun City Cell. Some of you may have seen it, I know from a previous talk I gave. And it has to do with border corruption. And this is what I made reference to with Mr. Comey earlier. I'll give you a hypothetical. Obviously citrus is a huge business for Florida. Pecans are a huge business for South Texas, almost on par with citrus. So if you say pecans in South Texas, along the border region even, you get the same kind of reaction as citrus growers here. So let me give you a hypothetical, very hypothetical. Let's imagine that the Sinaloa cartel needed a way to move drugs, money, weapons, people across the border. And let's say you wanted to have a sort of a smiley face, happy, cheerful front end in the United States. Because you're the Sinaloa cartel, you're bad guys. But you need to have a happy, smiley face operating in the front end in the United States. One of the ways you might wish to do that is to be in the agribusiness, growing pecans. Because how are pecans, who cares about pecans? Well, there's no machine that has successfully been able to shell a pecan. And so they literally shake trees, harvest up all the nuts, put them in 2,000-pound sacks. They ship them into Mexico. Mexican day workers shell the pecans by hand, every single one of them. And they repack up all the shelled nuts in these big 2,000-pound bags, and they send them back across the border. Think about that. 2,000-pound bags of nuts going back and forth every day, right? So let's say that you're running the business in, let's say, El Paso, Texas, or outside of El Paso. And you've got this big agribusiness where you're moving all these pecans, and you're the smiley face, you're the cheerful American end of the Sinaloa cartel, because you need to have a legit business to move all these pecans. But you're moving weapons, drugs, people, anything. Name it, you can move it.
Inside the bags?
And of course, you're very successful. You've done very, very well for yourself. And so you hang out at breakfasts just like this, because you're a prominent business person in the community. You're charming and cheerful and pleasant and nice, and you write checks, and everybody likes you. Don't ask too many questions about what else is in the bags, but everybody likes you. You're a great person. And you give money to the local hospital and the library and the kids foundation or whatever your favorite thing is. You know the other thing you do? Every once in a while you write checks to people who are going to be the district attorney for El Paso or Phoenix. And then that person who's the district attorney in El Paso or Phoenix, they become the attorney general. And then the attorney general decides that they want to run for governor, and you're still their friend. And you're the smiley face of the Sinaloa cartel in the United States. And the guy you're writing checks to or the woman you're writing checks to, they're the governor. Isn't that great? What if that governor became the Secretary of Homeland Security? Isn't that interesting? I'm just giving you a hypothetical, of course. Just a hypothetical. But if that were to be true, and if there were the smiley face of the Sinaloa cartel running an agribusiness that had those sorts of connections and were able to pull strings, and then if you looked at some of the people that are kind of running along in the pack, so let's say hypothetically, you had this person who was with that person who was a DA and then an attorney general and then a governor and then a secretary, cabinet member. They have all their posse that moves with them, right? Their horse holders and deputies and second assistant whatevers. And so sometimes those people advance up the ranks too. And so somebody who would, say, be an acting general counsel of Homeland Security who only lasts 6 months because there's such opposition to his prior criminal defense work that he really probably shouldn't be in a law enforcement position. And that person, hypothetically, was encouraged to resign. And then this person sets up their own lobbying operation in Washington, D.C., hypothetically. And you wonder, why do these, how come, well, that's just conspiracy theory. How could that be? So I encourage you to watch the Sun City Cell. Angel can give you we'll send you the URL, the little, email, internet address to type in, and then the password is very sophisticated. It's El Paso, lowercase. And you can watch it 48 minutes. I think you'll find it fascinating.
Question about
We go this way.
Ambassador Stevens.
Yeah.
What's your take on his family has not been vociferous at all with respect to his passing versus the families of the other 3 victims?
Yeah, I mean, I can speculate wildly, but I don't have anything hard and fast that I could really give you. I know X, whatever. I know Charles Woods. I know the father of Ty Woods. I met him a dozen times. Great guy. He's a retired attorney in Hawaii. Very knowledgeable, very charming, very smart guy. Loves his son, misses his son. You know, he was lied to as well, right? All the family members, of course, are all terribly mistaken and completely, you know, yeah, they don't know anything that, you know, Mrs. Clinton told them specifically, you know, the phony video story and we're going to get justice, and they were all lied to. But of course, they're all terribly, terribly mistaken.
And just one other point about the server real quick.
Sure.
Jorge Ramos, to his credit, the other night was right on point. He went directly
Yeah.
to the heart of the matter.
Right.
And specifically requested Mrs. Secretary Clinton to comment on, did you have permission to operate that server, private server at your home? And if you did, who gave you that permission? And was it President Obama, yes or no?
Yeah, and she lied
Didn't
again.
answer any of the questions.
Exactly.
In fact, she said it wasn't prohibited, and previous members of the State Department did, including Colin Powell. But that's not accurate because Colin Powell had a Gmail address. He did not have a server in his own home.
Correct.
And I was a little bit taken aback by Jorge Ramos because I thought he would, you know, push her on that. But
Yeah, they want to do just enough to say they did something but never press. I mean, let me give you an example. Here's a great example. So I'm sitting at headquarters, U.S. Army Europe in Heidelberg, Germany. I'm commanding a counterintelligence detachment, 27 special agents in the office. We're doing great stuff. Part of our mission is doing personnel security investigations, which is terribly boring but necessary. The other part of our mission is doing counterespionage work, which was very good and productive and exciting at the time. I get a phone call from General Saint's aide-de-camp, who's the Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Army Europe, on a matter concerning a classified, top-secret code word document. The whole thing blew up, became a big issue. It was never public because it was a security matter that we were going to fix, not in a cover-up mode, but we were going to fix internally because you wouldn't make public what happened. An otherwise completely honorable, good guy, a serving U.S. Army lieutenant colonel, wife, kids, great career. He's in the inner circle working for the sink. I mean, he's a sharp, good guy, but he made a mistake. He screwed up. He did something wrong with a top secret code word document.
Purpose?
No, he just made a human error. I mean, human beings make errors, and it happens. The 2 sections of law I told you about, 18 U.S.C. 793 and 1924, unlike many, many other criminal codes, there is no requirement in those 2 statutes to prove intent. So normally you have to say, well, you have motive, means, and opportunity, right? And someone's intention is very important, right? Intellect and free will. We make an informed decision and we act, and you're held accountable for that. Under the Espionage Act, those 2 statutes, there's no requirement to prove intent. Just the fact that the event occurred is the crime, because the act of losing the information is a harm to the United States. What you thought or felt or intended doesn't matter a damn. The fact that it occurred harmed the United States. So here's an otherwise honorable good guy with a solid career, doing well, like Colonel, and he is taken out of the building. I mean, taken out of the building. He's done. The Admiral may know of similar circumstances in your past experience. If that kind of compromise occurred, you could be the greatest guy in the world, but you're finished. His career is over. And the comparison to what we're talking about with respect to Mrs. Clinton, I mean, when you talk to other people, I've talked to other Department of Justice attorneys who are friends of mine, they will laugh. They'd say, look, I'd be in handcuffs, and they'd be running B-roll of FBI guys in windbreakers carrying cardboard boxes out of my house. That would be the B-roll they'd run on the news, film at 11. No one else would be treated this way. No one. So again, this is the reason I'm so emphatic about this stuff is this is not a theory for me. I've done it. This poor slob, I took him out of the building. He was done.
So she's being insulated from any current
Completely protected.
administration, basically.
Completely protected.
If it was a Republican administration, we wouldn't be having a conversation.
Right.
Yes.
That was my question. Is she ever gonna be accountable? Is it possible? You're saying that it's not. She's gonna possibly become president, and there's nothing that anybody really can do.
The great advantage, here's the saving grace. Even if Mr. Comey and Mrs. Lynch are horribly politicized, I think that they are, the plus side is Judicial Watch gets to ask questions, right? We're not going to pull punches.
Before the general election?
Yes.
Yeah?
We get discovery.
Good.
We will take sworn depositions of these people, and that is what terrifies them.
Will the media cover it?
Doesn't matter, we will, right? We'll videotape these depositions, and we'll put them on the internet.
Could you tell us your timeline for the discovery?
So Tuesday is our discovery plan submission deadline. The government has 3 weeks to respond to it, and then there's 2 weeks for us to come back with a final rebuttal or comment, and then we go.
But
Right?
you know-
Now, you can anticipate in the interim, every single person that we ask for, there's going to be, oh, I have to get my nails done, whatever it is, everyone's going to be very busy. But
And they can drag it out, do you think, past the general election, or
I don't believe so. I mean, we will start depositions this summer.
are there any news stations that will cover you?
I don't know how they couldn't at this point. I mean, the easy, obvious one is, Fox will run it, right? But I mean, it's terribly important what we're about to do. Terribly, terribly important.
It needs to be shared on Facebook and everywhere.
Yes, sir.
So, God forbid, it happens, she gets elected. And what are the repercussions to her after she gets elected? And now that comes in, well, I suppose it would be a different administration, it would be a Democratic. Would there ever be any repercussion to her anywhere down the road once she gets elected?
I mean, the short answer is no. If she's elected president of the United States, then this issue will be swept under the carpet. I mean, it isn't the first time, frankly. I mean, look, there's a huge campaign finance investigation done by Janet Reno with very damning information. And President George W. Bush got into office. Oh, we have to move on. Time to move on. I mean, frankly, it was an enormous disservice to the American public. Janet Reno herself had done this like her or dislike her, they had done their investigation. They had made recommendations for prosecution. Time to move on. We can't keep moving on, right? At some point, there's got to be some kind of accountability.
So what do you
Yes,
think
sir.
the prospect of this actually overflowing, coming to the point, right to the head before the election?
Yeah, so
I mean, we got a timing issue, and as long as they stonewall and she gets elected, it goes away, basically, is what you're saying.
yeah, and others have kind of war gamed this out and said, well, what happens if you have an indicted person running for office, right? And will there be sufficient pressure within the party to say, hey, thanks for playing, but you're done? Then what's next? And I think, and this is, who knows, this is wildly speculative, right? My crystal ball is broken, but I'll try to, one of the guesses is, well, then it becomes Joe Biden.
How damaging is it?
Joe Biden runs.
How damaging is it that she apparently told her daughter the real story and not the video story?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll turn the question right back to you and say, so it's now documented, indisputable, in public that she told her daughter the real deal that night and then went on for weeks to lie about it. How damaging is it?
You have that. You could solve the question.
But I mean, it's public. It's already, yeah, but I mean, the whole world knows it, and the response is shrug. Yes, sir.
If the FBI investigation comes to a conclusion and they present evidence to the Justice Department and say recommend an indictment, or they say there's enough evidence
Right.
to indict, and then justice does not indict, and there is a scandal, do you think that scandal alone, without FBI resignations, et cetera, would be enough to sink her ship?
Okay, so let's just do a little, there's an extra step in there I want to just discuss. So the, excuse me, the director of the FBI, in conjunction with there are attorneys in, all right, so to do what they're doing, in particular to grant immunity to this guy Pagliano, normally when you grant immunity to somebody, granting immunity is just, it's another tool. It's like using a polygraph, right? It's just another investigative tool. It is not an end unto itself. It's just another technique, another step or process. And so normally when immunity is granted, the investigators and a prosecuting attorney, a United States attorney at the worker level, an AUSA, an assistant U.S. attorney, is working with the FBI jointly, because the prosecuting attorney is the guy who has to make the case, but the FBI guys are gathering all the information. And so they have to satisfy the elements of the crime, each of the pieces of evidence. So the question is, well, where do you want to do this? Where would you want to prosecute this case? Do you want to prosecute it in D.C.? Or do you want to go to the scene of the crime, the Southern District of New York? Because Chappaqua falls within Southern District of New York, boundary-wise. So there's a question there. And working with the U.S. Attorney, the FBI would say, well, we want to give this guy a grant of immunity because we want to get the information from him. That's normally done when a grand jury has been convened, because the grand jury is the one who's actually going to indict. So they bring the information before the grand jury. I've also had the privilege of being the chairperson of a grand jury in Fairfax County, Virginia, that's another whole story. But they bring the information and they say, look, is there reason to believe that a crime has occurred here? And is there reason to believe that a court should look into this and come up with a legal finding of fact? That's the threshold, which is very low, very, very low. That's the old line about you could indict a ham sandwich kind of thing. Because all you have to do is say, is there reason to believe that a crime's been committed? That's pretty low stuff. So at some point, if a grand jury has not been convened, and Joe DeGeneva, who's a former U.S. attorney in D.C. and a colleague, a friend, we know each other, Joe DeGeneva is convinced that there is a grand jury, and grand juries operate in secret, right? They don't hang a sign out saying now in business, right? So they're not going to disclose their existence or what they're doing. He believes there is one. I don't know. I also have been not inappropriately or unlawfully trying to sniff around to find out if there is one that's been convened, particularly in the Southern District of New York, where I have friends that are there. Because I'm curious, is there any rumor, scuttlebutt, anything? I'd want to know. But at this level, because of who we're talking about, you would have to have the active participation of the Attorney General. This would not be left to second and third tier guys to decide on. It's just too sensitive, right? So investigators, prosecutor, Attorney General, go to a grand jury, they either indict or they hand back what's called a no bill. They say, no, not enough, go back and try again. We'll see. Yes, sir?
I'm surprised that it sounds like if and when she is president, she's in a safe harbor, because the Nixon resignation was caused by the Watergate hearings, and he did resign. Her husband was impeached while he was the president.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was, acquitted in the Senate, but I mean, it can go forward, and it has.
Yeah, and remarkably stubborn, right? I mean, when they're challenged and confronted and accused, deny, 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 right? That's the MO. That's how they operate. Yes, sir?
2 points. She might, if I was her and I was thinking that after I got elected that things could deconstruct, she might want to pick a vice president who would be a poison pill.
Yeah, there's an old joke. I don't know if this is true or not, but he's now passed away. A guy named Howard Phillips, who's a big sort of conservative icon, he jokingly said that when Reagan was going to be the Republican nominee, that he and a couple of other guys recommended Jesse Helms as vice president as assassination insurance. That was a joke, just a joke.
About a special prosecutor, any possibilities or role there for a special prosecutor to cut Loretta Lynch?
Again, this would have to be a decision that the Justice Department would have to be in on, right? And I mean, I don't know if you saw Loretta Lynch's interview with Brett Baer. You can Google that up and watch it. It's 20 minutes of very deliberate, very measured, rehearsed. You know, I'm not going to break my tone for 1 second. I'm going to stay right here, and just very flat delivery of non-committal. We're operating in a timely and professional manner, and we'll take everything. It's like somebody pulled a string in the back of her head. I mean, she just kept repeating the same thing over and over again. Yes, ma'am. Just 1 second. I want to get around. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just really want to say how much I appreciate your commitment to doing this. You know, the reason I came to America and I chose to become a citizen is because America is free in ways that nowhere else on this planet is. And very few people who have actually even been abroad have any idea or concept what other parts of the world experience and their mentality, their viewpoint. You know, Thomas Jefferson said every generation needs a revolution. And I believe the time is now. It is time to hold our leaders responsible and accountable, and no longer is that veil of delusion that, hey, we can do whatever we want, you are just the people. It is time for us to really, every one of us, to really believe in ourselves and in our country.
We have
I really appreciate your efforts and your obvious commitment and dedication to this end. Because if it wasn't for people like you, where would we be?
Thank you very much. We're very fortunate. We're very fortunate to have visitors come to us from all over the world, and some of them are sponsored by a private foundation, others by the State Department, believe it or not. And they come to us, and they want to know, how do you guys do what you do? And so we kind of give them, kind of like what I'm talking to you now about, but a little more mechanics of what we do. And I remember distinctly about 2 years ago, we had Francophone Africans, so French-speaking African countries, a lot of them obviously former French colonies. And we're doing a presentation, and this one guy just burst into laughter. And he wasn't trying to be a jerk, and he wasn't disrespectful. He just found what we were saying to be hysterical. And he laughed, and he shrugs, and he goes, if I did what you're doing in my country, I'd be dead.
Yeah.
They would kill me. I can't do this. So, I mean, you're right, but thank you.
Chris, would you tell the folks here that may not be aware the difference between Judicial Watch as an organization, what we do, and other great, nice groups out there, but the difference is?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned this in passing earlier. There's all kinds of folks out there, different organizations that, I mean, a lot of them are single issue advocacy. And what I mean by that is, and this is not a slight, it's just a fact. So the NRA is great on Second Amendment gun rights stuff. There's single issue advocacy. You won't hear the NRA talk about other stuff because their thing is Second Amendment, which is great. I'm an NRA member. I'm not making fun of them or whatever. But there's other groups in town that they kind of have their pet rock that's their thing that do. We're full spectrum, right? There's all kinds of stuff that we poke and ask inconvenient, awkward questions about. Obamacare, crazy environmental groups that are trying to protect the Chiricahua spotted leopard frog in Arizona. I mean, it's a real thing. I'm not kidding. So we have a broad sweep, right? Our whole function is transparency in government. So we do a lot of different topics. And here's the difference. We litigate, and I have investigators who go out and we find people and interview them and take sworn declarations and go to archives and pull records. You may remember back when President Obama was first running, people were talking about, oh, he was a friend of Bill Ayers and they were on the same Annenberg Foundation. We went to the Annenberg Foundation and we pulled the records where it shows them meeting together. People were just talking about it incessantly. Well, where's the record? I mean, that's the thing about what we do is that even if you don't agree with us editorially or philosophically, and you say, well, yeah, okay, Farrell, that's your opinion. That's wonderful, but I'm not 100%. I really don't think that you're on the mark. Great. Go to our website, look at the records. All of our stuff is document and record driven. So if you don't want to believe me or don't like our editorial position, fine. Read the records for yourself. You tell me what it means.
I strongly recommend that you read the newsletter that you've got in the packet and go to their website and just see how extensive their work is.
Yeah, it's all document driven.
Because let me
Yes.
just comment something. Normally, we're done at this time, so if somebody has to leave, go ahead. But as long as you're gonna keep going.
I'm fine.
I think we ought to, most of us.
Yeah, I
want to stay
mean,
in-
do what you got to do. I'm just here to. Yes, sir.
Two questions. One, have you had any problems with the IRS in the last few years? And the second question, since you are more of a real fact-finding legal, are you legally allowed to do this?
Yeah.
There's of course been a lot of issues with Obama with the birth certificate issues, and did you end up getting involved in any of that? And what sort of real evidence is there to support his natural rights to be president?
Okay, so I'll do the second one first. We looked at the birth certificate thing, and we found no foundation for doing anything about it. All kinds of smart guys looked at it, and it just, I know that it's a thing, and people are convinced one way or the other. We didn't find anything illegally to go after. So some people don't like that, other people do. I'm just telling you, we did our analysis, and that's what we came up with. Now, the IRS, you'll find this very amusing. So, the IRS was weaponized, right? It was turned into a weapon against Tea Party groups, patriot groups, all kinds of folks. And it was a deliberate effort to weaponize the IRS in a way that would make Richard Nixon blush, right? Nixon only talked about having people audited. No one was audited in his direction. This is a case where the IRS ran wild and destroyed people or put them in limbo, right? Never gave them a letter saying, yes, you're actually a 501c3, go forth and do business. So it put people in this position where they didn't know what they could do or not do. I'm sympathetic to that because we were audited by the IRS. So we weren't talked about or denied a piece of paper. We were put through the mill. Now, here's the fun story. In 1999, IRS agents showed up at our office, which is actually kind of silly because the IRS knows that our outside tax counsel is Webster, Chamberlain, and Bean in Alexandria, Virginia. If they wanted documents or papers, they're going to call them up and say, hey, look, we need files or whatever. But they didn't do that, right? So agents show up, badge and gun agents, and they come in, do one of these jobs with and they go to serve our poor receptionist who's like, you can't serve her. She's a receptionist. She's not a registered agent, right? You have to get an officer of the organization to do it. And the smart aleck remark the agent said is, well, what do you expect when you sue the president? Right? This is 1999. So thanks to President William Jefferson Clinton for starting an audit. We found out what happened. Somebody got a piece of our direct mail, something like you have now in your folders, and faxed it to the White House and said, I think you should get these guys. And the White House took that and faxed it over to the IRS. And so it's supposed to be 2 years. They stretched it to 6. Here's the good news. They looked through 6 years of records. Not a single finding against us. Not one. And if you've had any experience, you know that if you sign the form in blue ink and not black, that's a finding, right? So if they want to have a finding, they will go after you and destroy you. So they looked at 6 years of records, not a single finding against us, not one. And I'm very proud of that, right? But here's the other part of it is the process is the punishment, right? The process is the punishment. The outcome, who cares? The other part of it is the hallway whispering campaign. Because back then, when that was kind of a novel thing to actually go after somebody with a law, you're going to have an audit, right? Then in hallways and meetings and outside getting coffee, hey, did you hear Judicial Watch is being audited? They're being, oh. How do you recover from that? You recover from that by coming out on the other end without a single finding against you, right? But in the interim, it's lawyers, accountants, aggravation, staff copying endless piles of paper. It's just to churn and grind you up, and that's what the purpose is. Because you're distracted. You're not doing what you're doing. You're running around making sure that, hey, do you have the receipts from the conference you guys held in 2000? Yeah, we have a conference file here. It's just, that's what the objective is. So it's not we're not another time where we're not guessing at it. We've been through it. We know.
Chris, could you get a little more into the links with the Clinton Foundation?
There's two interesting things. So Bill Clinton's been running around the world giving speeches in his personal capacity, but there's also the Clinton Foundation, right, which is another separate animal unto itself. And basically, in my humble opinion, it's sort of like a money laundering operation, right? Because if you want to give money to kids in Haiti who are victims of tornadoes and earthquakes, whatever, then go give money to kids who are victims. Why are you running all the money through the Clinton Foundation, right? Go give it to Doctors Without Borders, or go give it to the. But they use this foundation as a device for influence, for contact, for control, and so we had to sue also to get. I think it's 247 waiver forms, where every time, as a condition of employment for Mrs. Clinton to be Secretary of State, she had to agree that she would disclose all of her husband's activities that might in some way impact on her as Secretary of State. And so they had these disclosure forms, and he would say, hey, look, I'm going to Abu Dhabi to go talk to this group, or I'm going to China to go talk to that group, or I'm going, and so there's all these forms, and they're all on our website. You can go look at them. And he had to disclose where he was going and who he was talking to. This is part of the public corruption case I was talking about that they're trying to match up. And all of them were signed off as being A-OK. Not a single one was ever told no. And not a single one was ever told, well, wait, next quarter, we're still trying to resolve something that's a foreign policy issue. Every single one of them was approved. And guess who the approval authority was? You'll laugh. Cheryl Mills. So it's all terribly convenient. Works out very nicely. So.
Wow. Oh.
Yes, sir.
What about the arms sales to Qatar and Saudi Arabia, pay to play, and the money goes to the Clinton Foundation? I mean, that smells like treason. She should be in an orange jumpsuit.
Yeah, there's I encourage you to look up some work by, she's a professional colleague, also a personal friend, Catherine Herridge at Fox News. She's a brilliant lady. Look up some reporting she's done on a guy who's a completely legit arms dealer. He's, certified by the Defense Department, Commerce Department, State Department. He has all the licenses to be in that business. And he has been for 20 some odd years. And he does. He buys, sells, moves arms around the country, or around the world. And so he's one of the certified guys to do that. And he found himself in a very curious position where he had lined up the shipment of arms and then suddenly found himself, hey, you didn't fill this form out right, one of those kind of charges. And it's alleged that when he was sort of suspended from doing the transaction, somebody else, terribly convenient to the Clintons, surprise, surprise, jumped in and did the deal for him, right? So I'd encourage you, this is on recollection. I don't have all the exact dates, times, places, but I encourage you to look at Catherine Herridge's reporting on that. I think you'll find it interesting. So
what you referred me to was a video of her interview. You sent me a link.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of her.
And I can do that, or I'll have Angels pass that along to you, or if you want to pass it along, that's fine too.
Tom, what was that? Good time for me to just say, folks, if you like what you've heard, what we do.
These are all
we
yours.
are a nonprofit.
Playing with them.
Look at the packets. Go to our website. You have my business card. Contact us. Of course, I can say this. My responsibility. Send us money. That's the only way we can fight the corruption, is because the government has deep pockets, and I think we can name EPA, DOD, Homeland Security. We're fighting them all. So, thank you very much for having us. And
yeah, we appreciate it very much. Thanks.